Hello everyone, this is Rupesh. Today I'll be engaging paper C202 Organic Chemistry, Unit 4. In that I'll be discussing amino acids and peptides. Amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So before going to amino acids, let's see what are proteins. Proteins are the most abundant organic molecules in animals, playing important roles in all aspects of cell structure and function. These are biopolymers of alpha amino acids, so named because the amino group is bonded to the alpha carbon atom next to the carbonyl group. That is, this is the amino group which is attached to the alpha carbon atom. This is alpha carbon is attached to carbonyl group. So this is a alpha carbon atom which is a chiral carbon. The physical and chemical properties of a protein are determined by its constituent amino acids. The proteins have an amazing range of structural and catalytic properties as a result of their varying amino acid composition. Because of this versatility, proteins serve as an astonishing variety of functions in living organisms. We all know there are 20 naturally occurring alpha amino acids. This is a general structure of alpha amino acid, whereas the amino acid exists in a zwitter ionic nature. Whereas this is a alpha carbon atom and this is a amino acid side chain and this is chiral hydrogen. Coming to the naturally occurring amino acids, this is the simplest amino acid, that is glycine, and these are 3-letter code and this is a single letter code. This is alanine, valine, leucine. This is isoleucine, proline, where proline is the only secondary amino group. There is secondary amino acid with a 5-member ring. Proline, phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, serine, threonine, cysteine, methionine, histidine, lysine, arginine, aspartic acid, aspargine, glutamic acid, glutamine. These are the 20 naturally occurring alpha amino acids. Now let's see, before going to this peptides and amide bonds, let's see the difference between the amide bond and the peptide bond. Generally, amide bond is this is a secondary amide bond, CONH. This will be if CONH is between two aryl groups or aryl or alkyl or alkyl and alkyl, it is called generally amide bond. For example, you can see paracetamol. You can see an amide bond between an alkyl group as well as an aryl group. Whereas this is an atorvastatin, this is a medicinally important compound where you can see the amide bond between two aryl groups. Coming to the peptide, the same amide bond, but the difference is the amide bond will be packed between two amino acids. And this, as I told, this is a structure of an amino acid. For example, see, the amide bond is embedded between two amino acids. And this is an example of angiotensin and oxytocin. These are the hormones which is present in our body. So to be simple, peptide bond is generally referred when amide bond is between two amino acids. Now coming to the peptides. The most important reaction of amino acids is the synthesis of peptide bond, that is formation of peptide bond. Amines and acids, that is amines and carboxylic acids, can condense with the loss of water to form amides. Industrially, the process often make amide simply by mixing the carboxylic acid and an amine, then refluxing the mixture to remove the water. That is, this is a carboxylic acid with the reaction of amine will give this a corresponding salt. These on refluxing we get an amide bond with the elimination of water molecule. These amides are the most stable acid derivatives. This stability is partly due to the strong resonance interaction between the non-bonding electrons on nitrogen and the carbonyl group. That is, the non-bonding electron shifts to this bond and the electron jumps to oxygen. That is, it will become O minus and in A plus. There will be partial charges. The amide nitrogen is no longer a strong base, and the CN bond has restricted rotation because of its partial double bond character. This is a partial double bond character. Due to this, the CN bond has been restricted. In a peptide, this partial double bond character results in 6 atoms being held rather rigidly in a plane. That is, if you see a peptide bond, this is a peptide. This is a peptide bond here. That is, it says that due to this partial double bond character results in 6 atoms being held rather rigidly in a plane. That is, this is a CO carbonyl, and this is an NH, and this is an chiral carbon, and this is one chiral carbon. So there are 6 atoms being held in a plane, and this is the amide plane. This whole region is called an amide plane. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are held in a single plane called amide plane. Having both an amino group and a carboxyl group, an amino acid is ideally suited to form an amide linkage. To be specific, a peptide linkage. The name itself indicates amino acid. There are 2 groups, that is amino group as well as carboxyl functional group. Under the proper conditions, specific conditions, the amino group of one molecule condenses with the carboxyl group of the another molecule. The product is just a dipeptide because it consists of 2 amino acids. This is the general structure of a peptide bond formation, whereas carboxyl group of one amino acid condenses with the amino group of the another, which results in the peptide bond formation. This is generally called a dipeptide, means a peptide bond between 2 amino acids. The amide linkage between the amino acids is called a peptide bond. Although it has a special name, a peptide bond is just like other amide bonds which we have studied. In this manner, a many number of amino acids can be bonded in a continuous chain to form a peptide or a protein. A peptide is a compound containing 2 or more amino acids linked by amide bond between the amino group of each amino acid and the carboxyl group of the neighboring amino acid. Each amino acid unit in the peptide is called a residue. Let's say the difference between a polypeptide, proteins and oligopeptide. Polypeptide is a peptide containing many amino acid residues, that is up to maximum 4 or 5, but usually having a molecular weight of less than about 5000. Whereas proteins contain more amino acid units with molecular weights ranging from about 5000 to about 4 crores. Whereas the oligopeptide is occasionally used for the peptides containing about 4 to 10 amino acid residues. To be simple, if there are 4 amino acids in a peptide, it is called a polypeptide. If there are 4 to 10 amino acid residues, then it is called a oligopeptide. For example, nonapeptide. Bradykinin is a nonapeptide, a human hormone that helps to control blood pressure. This is the structure of a bradykinin. Nonapeptide, the name itself indicates there are 9 amino acids and 8 peptide bonds, that is 8 amide bonds. Now coming to the nomenclature of the peptides, the end of the peptide with free amino group is called N-terminal end or N-terminus, and the end with the free carboxyl group is called the C-terminal or C-terminus. Peptide structures are generally drawn with the N-terminus at the left and the C-terminus at the right. The names of the peptide reflects the names of the amino acid residues involved in the amide linkages right from the N-terminus. All except the last are given the YL suffix of acyl groups. For example, the following dipeptide is named alanine serine. This is a dipeptide formed between an alanine as well as a serine. This is alanine and this is serine. So the alanine residue will get a YL suffix because it has acylated the nitrogen of serine. Hence, all the second point shows all except the last are given the YL suffix of acyl groups. So the first one will take a alanine and the last one will carry the same thing. Coming to the example 2, bradykinin is named as follows. See, arginine, proline, as I said, there are 9 amino acids. These are the 9 amino acids which make bradykinin. Arginine, prolyl, glycyl, phenylalanine, seryl, prolyl, phenylalanine, arginine. It's not arginine, it's arginine. This is a cumbersome and awkward name which is difficult to remember and difficult to write also. So there is a shorthand system which is more convenient, representing each and amino acids by a 3-letter abbreviation. These abbreviations are generally the first 3 letters of the amino acid. That is, a bradykinin as a following abbreviated name. As I said, the amino acid, these abbreviations are generally the first 3 letters of the amino acid. That is, arginine, for arginine it's just ARG, for proline it's PRO, for glycine GLY, phenylalanine, serine, proline, phenylalanine and arginine. Recently, the single letter symbols are becoming widely used as well. So using single letters, we symbolize bradykinin by just R for arginine, P for proline, G for glycine, F for phenylalanine, S for serine, proline, phenylalanine and arginine. Now, the alanyl serine in the previous example is abbreviated as alaserine, ALASER. This is easy way. And using single letter symbol, alanyl serine is represented as just as AS. Coming to the classification of peptides. As already mentioned, oligopeptides, that is a peptide bond containing 4 to 10 amino acids, whereas polypeptides contains at least 4 amino acid residues, are distinguished depending on whether the peptide is formed by the union of less than 4 or minimum 4 amino acid. Linear peptides with a free amino acid at one end and a free carboxylic acid at the other. That is, it's a simple linear chain which has both amino group at one end, carboxylic group at the other end. Whereas coming to the branched peptides, these are the peptides where the branching of one or several amino acids on a linear peptide chain takes place, either by the omega carboxylic group of a dicarboxylic amino acid or by the gamma eta amino group of the lysine. That is, a peptide bond will be forming in the side chains of the many amino acids. That is called branched peptides. Whereas coming to the cyclic peptides which have neither N-terminal nor C-terminal end, that is, it will be forming a ring. So it will be a circle thing. The peptide will be in the circle form. Coming to the semi-cyclic peptides, these are the peptides having only one end. That is, either N-terminal end will be free or else C-terminal, that is carboxylic end, will be free. Coming to the important one, sequencing the peptides, that is terminal residue analysis, that is analysis from the terminal end, analysis of the sequence, that is analysis of which amino acids are present in the peptide from the terminal. The amino acid analyzer determines the amino acids present in a peptide, but it does not reveal their sequence, the order in which they are linked together. That is, the analyzer can determine the amino acids in a peptide. That is, it can say how many amino acids are there and what are the amino acids, but it does not reveal the sequence in which the amino acids are linked together. That is, at the fifth position which amino acid is there, and first position which amino acid it is there. The analyzer can't say at which position which amino acid is there. So the peptide sequence is destroyed in the hydrolysis step. To determine the amino acid sequence, we must cleave one after the one amino acid from the chain and leave the rest of the chain intact. The cleaved amino acid can be separated, identified, and the process can be repeated on the rest of the peptide chain. The amino acid may be cleaved from either end of the peptide, that is from starting from N terminus or from sequencing starts from C terminus. Either end of the peptides we can start, and we will consider one method used for each end. This general method for peptide sequence is called terminal residue analysis. For example, if you consider this as a peptide chain, you can start sequencing from N terminal. That is, you can cleave here, separate the first amino acid and leave the remaining peptide intact. And next you can cleave the second amino acid, separate it and identify and repeat the process. And there is other way. You can start sequencing from the carboxylic end also. That is, cleave the amide bond, peptide bond here, isolate, identify it, isolate it, separate, and see which amino acid it is. And then start here, cleave this peptide bond and see, identify it, separate it, and repeat the process. So you can sequence the peptide either from the N terminal or C terminal. The main aim of the sequencing is at which position which amino acid is there, to see the amino acid linkages in the peptide. There are two important methods of sequencing, that is sequencing from the N terminus, that is Sanger method. In 1945, Sanger developed a successful procedure for determining the sequence of the amino acid of a peptide. This method is also known as DNP, that is 2,4-dinitrophenyl derivative. So it is called as DNP method. In this method, the peptide is treated with the 2,4-dinitrofluorobenzene, or else to be simple, it is called as Sanger's reagent, and then hydrolyzed by reaction with 6 molar aqueous HCl. The N-terminal amino acid is recovered as its DNP derivative, that is 2,4-dinitrophenyl derivative, and identified. But the rest of the peptide is destroyed during hydrolysis. That is, even the other peptide bonds are present in the chain are broken into simple amino acids. There are many steps involved in this method, which are coming to the step 1, tagging of the peptide. That is 1,fluoro-2,4-dinitrobenzene. To be simple, it is also known as 2,4-dinitrofluorobenzene or else Sanger's reagent. This is the Sanger's reagent on reaction with N-terminal peptide. Tagging of a peptide is just a hooking of this amino group. Tagging. This on treatment with mild base sodium bicarbonate, which gives a DNP peptide. That is 2,4-dinitrophenyl derived peptide. Here mild base is used, so it is called a shortened Bowman condition. It's shortened Bowman type of condition, because in the amino acid chemistry, if you use a mild base for the amide bond formation, then it is called a shortened Bowman type condition. You use mild basic condition is used here because it should neutralize the HF produced as a side product. So hence mild base is used to neutralize the HF so generated in the reaction. HF is a acid produced in the reaction. Coming to the step 2 hydrolysis, this DNP derived peptide on acid hydrolysis yields DNP amino acid. So on hydrolysis, amide bond is cleaved here, so you will get a DNP derived single amino acid. Whereas as I told you, during hydrolysis step, even these peptides are broken into simple amino acids. So only you will get this DNP amino acid plus many amino acid residues as your byproducts. Coming to the step 3, isolation and identification of amino acids. The DNP amino acid and amino acid residues are separated and identified by chromatographic techniques, that is generally TLC and column chromatography, as well as it is characterized. The DNP derivatives are formed with any free amino group. Hence, the DNP method may give rise to a number of DNP derivatives as a byproduct. This, but sometimes however, can be readily isolated and identified by chromatographic techniques. If the basic amino acid is not N-terminal, then it will form mono DNP derivative. For example, this is not an N-terminal amino acid. This is not a basic N-terminal. So there is only one amino group. Hence mono DNP derivative. Whereas if you have an N-terminal, if the amino acid is basic, that is if your N-terminal amino acid is basic, then you will get a di-DNP derivative. That is, you can see in the lysine there are two amino groups. So during DNP reaction you will get a di-DNP derivative. For example, except lysine, even tyrosine and histidine, sometimes it forms di-DNP derivative, since it has a basic side chain, a basic group in the side chain of the amino acid. The DNP method cannot be used repetitively, as I said before. During hydrolysis, it even breaks the complete hydrolysis of peptide takes place into its corresponding amino acids. Only DNP derived amino acid can be separated, whereas other peptide sequence is destroyed in this reaction. Since its use requires complete hydrolysis of the DNP derivative. This shows that during hydrolysis or the other amino acid, other peptide bond which is broken into amino acids, which is difficult to find, only DNP derived amino acid can be separated. This method can't be applied to the other peptide chain. The following scheme is a simple equation of Sankar's method. To put in a simple equation, this Sankar reagent on treatment with the peptide chain, in the presence of a mild base, we get a DNP peptide. On hydrolysis, we get a DNP amino acid, whereas this peptide sequence is broken into amino acids. And coming to the next important Edman method, it is also called as Edman degradation. In 1950, Edman developed the most efficient method for sequencing the peptide. The basis for the reaction is the reaction between phenyl isothiocyanate and the peptide, or to sometimes proteins, to form the phenyl thiocarbamyl peptide in the presence of a dilute alkali. On acid hydrolysis, the PTC peptide is converted to a phenyl thiohydrantoin via cyclization to thiazolinone and a peptide as a byproduct. This reaction takes place in three stages. Step 1, the free amino group of the N-terminal amino acid, that is the free terminal of the N-terminal amino acid, reacts with the phenyl isothiocyanate to form a phenyl thiourea or phenyl thiocarbamyl peptide, that is PTC peptide. See here, a free amino group reacts with the phenyl isothiocyanate in the presence of dialkali. It forms a salt and resonating to give PTC peptides. Coming to step 2, the phenylthiourea or PTC peptide on cyclizes to a thiazolinone ring in acid medium and expels the shortened peptide chain. That is, this PTC peptide on acid hydrolysis in the presence of water which abstracts its hydrogen gives thiazolinone as well as this peptide. Coming to the step 3, the thiazolinone which we got in the previous step isomerizes to the more stable phenyl thiohydrantoin, that is PTH. That is, this is a thiazolinone ring. The lone pair on nitrogen attacks the carbonyl group where CS bond is broken and shifts to this bond and the adjacent double bond which takes up a proton to give phenyl thiohydrantoin. This phenyl thiohydrantoin derivative is identified with chromatography, that is by using TLC as well as column chromatography, and it is also identified by comparing it with phenyl thiohydrantoin derivatives of the standard amino acids. This process can now be repeated on the degraded peptide. That is, the peptide bond which is produced as a byproduct, even you can apply the Edman method to that peptide also. During hydrolysis, during acidification, the peptides are not destroyed in this reaction. This process is well suited to automation and several types of automatic sequencers have been developed. Just because the peptides are not destroyed in this method, whereas in the Sanger's method the peptides are destroyed to give the respective amino acids. In theory, Edman degradations could sequence a peptide of any length, that is, whereas in the Sanger's you can't do that, just you can identify a single amino acid, whereas in the Edman degradation you could sequence the peptide of any length. In practice, however, you can repeat the cycles of degradation. However, the repeated cycles of degradation cause some internal hydrolysis of the peptide with loss of sample and accumulation of byproducts. About 30 cycles of degradation, further accurate analysis becomes impossible. That is, you can degrade for about 30 cycles. You can use this Edman degradation for about 30 cycles. More than that, it is impossible, which gives lot of impurities as byproducts. A small peptide such as bradykinin, which I told you before, it is a nonapeptide, a human hormone, can be completely determined by this method. But larger proteins must be broken into smaller fragments before they can be completely sequenced. That is, if a protein have a 50 amino acids, you should just break it to 25 plus 25 and then start sequencing this 25 amino acids. And coming to the cleavage of peptide bond by chemical and enzymatic methods. Coming to the first one, let's see chemical methods of cleavage. First one, using HOBr, that is hypobromous acid. Let's see the usage of hypobromous acid in cleavage of peptide bond. Hypobromous acid specifically cleaves the C-terminal peptide bond between a tyrosine and the adjacent amino acid in the peptide chain. That is, it cleaves specifically the carboxyl group of the tyrosine and the amino group of the adjacent amino acid in the peptide chain. Reaction of tyrosine containing peptides with HOBr generates a tribromo derivative of the phenolic side chain in tyrosine, which then rearranges to a spirolactone with the concomitant cleavage of the peptide bond. That is a reaction of a tyrosine containing peptides. This is a tyrosine containing a peptide sequence. Reaction with reaction of this tyrosine containing peptides with HOBr generates a tribromo derivative. This is a tribromo derivative of a phenolic side chain. This is a phenolic side chain in the tyrosine, which then rearranges to a spirolactone. This is a spirolactone with the concomitant cleavage of the peptide bond. See here, this peptide bond has been cleaved here. So this is the concomitant cleavage of the peptide bond, which and also formation of a spirolactone ring. So HOBr, this shows that HOBr cleaves specifically at a carboxyl group of a tyrosine and the amino group of the adjacent amino acid. This is the adjacent amino acid. Coming to the next reagent, that is N-bromosuccinamide. N-bromosuccinamide, which is used to cleave the carboxyl group of the tryptophan and amino group of the adjacent amino acid. This is the peptide containing tryptophan. This NBS cleaves the peptide bond here. This peptide on reaction with NBS, which gives a bromonium ion, that is NBS is a more reliable source of positively charged bromine. This is a bromonium ion, that is a tryptophan on reaction with NBS, we get a bromonium ion, which on rearrangement we get, which on electron transfer we get this one. This on treatment with water we get a cleavage of peptide bond with a spirolactone ring and a peptide sequence. Of course, the tyrosine side chain is not inert toward NBS. That is, this NBS, that is the N-bromosuccinamide, can affect even the tyrosine amino acid as well as the histidine residues if it is present in a peptide sequences. Coming to the next reagent, cyanogen bromide. A cyanogen bromide is used to cleave the peptide bond between a methionine. Cyanogen bromide, a fission of the peptide chain occurs when a methionine containing peptides are exposed to the action of cyanogen bromide. This is the methionine containing a peptide sequence, which on reaction with treatment with cyanogen bromide we get the salt, which on hydrolysis we get a spirolactone ring with the cleave of a peptide bond and the side product. Coming to the next method of cleavage, that is enzymatic methods of cleavage. Specifically, specific proteolytic enzymes are employed for the hydrolysis of peptide bond, which are called peptidases. Hydrolysis with specific peptidases are more selective and can be used to break the peptide into fragments rather than individual amino acids. There are two types, that is endopeptidases and exopeptidases. Coming to endopeptidases, these enzymes cleave the peptide bond specifically, that is explicitly, the carboxyl group of the peptide of a specific amino acid. For example, trypsin cleaves the peptide bond, specifically the carboxyl group of the lysine. Coming to exopeptidases, here there are two subdivisions, that is aminopeptidases and carboxypeptidases. Coming to aminopeptidases, these catalyze the hydrolysis of the peptide bond, which follows the N-terminal residue, which is called A. As a consequences, after cleaving the one of the amino acid, the second amino acid residue becomes N-terminal, which is cleaved off in the subsequent reactions. That is, aminopeptidases catalyze the hydrolysis of the peptide bond at the N-terminal residues starting from the N-terminus. For example, if we consider this as a ABC as a amino acids and this is a peptide sequences on reaction with aminopeptidases enzyme, this A amino acid is cleaved, which gives a B starting from B as a N terminal, which on further reaction with this aminopeptidases enzyme, a amino acid a peptide is cleaved only at the N terminal, but not from the C terminal. And coming to the carboxypeptidases, it is reverse to that aminopeptidases where this peptide on treatment with carboxypeptidases, it starts cleaving the peptide from the carboxyl group. That is, the G in the first step, the G is cleaved off, and in the second step, this F is cleaved off. And this, if continuous treatment with carboxypeptidases, it's keep on cleaving the peptide bond, and so on. Yeah, this is all about amino acids and peptides, sequencing and cleavage of peptide bonds. In the next class, we'll see about peptide synthesis. Thank you. Bye for now. See you in the next class.